I suppose sometimes I don't always come out and say I'm going to use a qualifier, but I'm going to do that this time. And that would be, I figure most of us know what applied physics is and applied math, right? Applied math and physics, right? Applied math when it comes to geography, geometrical math and physics codes. Plug in another element called the spirit of fire, right? So now you have the cross inside of a living star where you have north, south, east, and west, right? So you have water, oxygen, or air, if you will, the spirit in the wind, right? And then you have water, DNA born in water worlds, right? The earth, wind, water, and fire. That's the four arrows, right? And the center point of that is balance. So now you have all the elements that are in balance, which means all the units of consciousness that are represented by the elementals are all in balance, which means we're all working together, playing music. That's a musical sphere. That means the spirit that is in the sphere. When you plug in the eternal spirit of fire, that's an eternal sun. That's an eternal state of consciousness. That's an eternal state of a love vibration. Right? That's a guardian. That means that the center point of love consciousness, eternal love consciousness, is naturally going to protect everything that represents what it is, which is what love is, that it sees and experiences in the mirror, the magnetic light. Thus, we're recording what we experience. So now we're into learning and accelerated learning. And now you can get into tampering, if you will, in classrooms by putting a governor on learning, putting a governor on the speed of learning. Well, you're learning too fast. The speed, the acceleration speed of learning through eternity. Having an eternal love connection. Being the eternal spirit of fire, right? An eternal star. The consciousness that is eternal. So you have an API system, which is the application program interface. Application, the application of consciousness. I'm applying my consciousness, which is applied math and physics, to the geometry, which is the geographical user interface of a TV station we're running. Man, I'm running a holographic TV station. Yeah. So what kind of power are you running on? Right? Low power, high power, right? And that's why in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's referred to whatever your perception of power is. Right? Are you the main power station? Are you an accelerator? Or are you an inverter? Right? So you know if you're using fire as an inverter, somebody comes along and is experiencing an eternal spirit of fire, right? That's called a firewall on a biocomputer. That's stealth code. That's guardian level light, which is eternal light, which is eternal love. It's on fire. So that means you have the ability as a polarity integrator, do what? Burn off a contamination zone. Codes. Burning off goo codes that don't belong there. And so another way to translate this, a couple of different ways to translate this, I suppose, is by the way that I experience it by virtue of what I share with others. So I have, maybe I shouldn't say this, well, actually, no, because this would probably be, I'll just tell the truth. A Kanaka Mehole, right? The lady that I've referred to in the past, her and I have both worked with Nathan, which is always negative. And Nathan has experienced, and like we all have, an enormous, because we realize how long this drama, this polarity game has been going on for a long, 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 long time. I talk to Mama all the time, you know, and let her know, I know, Mama, this has been a long road to hoe. You know, like hoeing a garden, hoeing Mama's garden, bringing the garden back, the end of history and the rebirth of a goddess, the goddess energy. You better believe it. Terence McKenna got that right. And so, you know, that's the return of the spirit of fire, the eternal spirit of fire, which really is a measurement of how much love we have in our heart. Because that's what they want to put out. You stop loving who you are. So that's why when I was a child, it was massive mass media programming, right? To essentially what is really to become an inverter. Because now, in order to be what's being presented to us, like buy this, buy that, that's the carnival barker, right? Okay, so if you don't know the difference between what they are, which is an inverter, and what we are as eternal spirit of fire, right, then folks will do what? You'll see in the future when you're observing children, by virtue of their holographic eyeballs, always in that TV screen, recording the information being presented, now held in memory, and then track their future. And see if what's been presented, right, is now experienced from childhood into adulthood by the cars they drive, the clothes they wear, right, and the things that they do. So they're all following each other. Because you can look around and see, hey, they're all driving the same kind of cars. They're all living in the same kind of houses. They're all wearing the same kind of clothes. They all wear ties on. Okay, so in other words, that's called a formation of consciousness or groupthink. Right? They're all following what each other does. And what I began to realize when I was a child in the early 1950s, why they do that. You're different. How come you're not doing everything we're doing? As a matter of fact, everybody's wearing a certain kind of pants, a certain kind of shirt, a certain kind of shoe, live in a certain kind of house, walk a certain way, drive a certain way, drive a certain car a certain way, watch certain programs a certain way, read the same kind of magazines, read the same kind of stuff, right? And that's called a map read. You're map reading the programming, okay, that's held in memory that they run as program apps, program realities. That's the APIN system. Right? So, in other words, if you started out with a blank disk and you just came into the universe, well, let's just say somebody created a brand new universe and you wanted to go visit. Right? And you're experiencing eternal love through your own heart as an eternal spirit of fire. And you choose to go visit another universe. Hey, let's go see what's going on over in this universe. And now you're observing, if you will, or experiencing what they're experiencing. Now you're experiencing what they're doing to their own energy field, which is blowing holes in it. So you realize what's going to happen to that civilization that's being built by what they follow to build what they now experience, because their consciousness is the energy that is programming that reality to experience in the future what they do, which is a mass extinction event. Now, if you tie that into the oxygen levels, then what we mean is, go ask any conservation biologist, ask any environmental engineer. What happens if you reduce the oxygen levels on a planet to a certain level? What happens? A dead planet. Trees breathe. They're big mirrors. Start burning down all the trees. Remember the publication that I talked about in 1971? I'll even give you a better example. Clan Mother Karen Ann Luke MacDonald posted some documents in the international court, right, that said, hey, corporations, I have the authority as a clan mother, right, to be able to issue, right, these documents that are supposed to have teeth in them, like the teeth of a lion, like Lyra, right? I mean, as a clan mother, I'm the highest sovereign authority here on this planet. Therefore, what I say goes. So if I say that's what goes and I put this into international law, then in the future, I should experience the future event, okay, by factor of that being the law, clan mother law, right? So now we can measure over time space the future that we experience to see whether or not that law has any what? Effect. Right? Because we will experience whether or not that law, which is love is a law, is being complied with, right? So as you can probably tell by a lot of my videos, my emotional body, it works quite well. I do have an emotional connection, right? To the source from which it all began, which are powerful scalar waves when you're experiencing the eternal spirit of fire and you're working with the sun, with the spirit of fire in that sun, right? Putting out a lot of heat, right? A lot of electromagnetic radiation. Consciousness that is powerful, living star electromagnetic radiation. Right? So yeah, the spirit of fire is the most powerful spirit because that's a purifying spirit. I've said this before, this would be true. If I didn't experience that, if I didn't experience eternal love in my heart from the time I was 4 years of age, I'd have been consumed already. My soul would have been gone. Okay? So you realize, I said this to Patty Broussard, coming in here as a salvage contract, okay? Now, these were special forces missions, guardian missions. Otherwise, they'll just take you right out. By the tech, biochips for one, right? And how holographic inserts work. You know, you just become a battery to siphon soul energy off of. Right? And that, the simple fact in that is the ability for the AI to map read you because it's a gamer, a binary gamer. Right? You make a move, it makes a move, a counter move. You make a move, it makes another move. Make a move, make another move. Right? So now that's when you get into the checkerboard square the same way that folks play chess. Checkmate, 7 moves. Right? Or on a blackjack table, what they call a push. You don't win, I don't win. Right? There is no winner and there is no loser. We all win. Wind. Breathing fire. Breathing the spirit of fire. So it began with fire. That's right. Sure as heck did. It began with fire. The spirit of fire. The intensity of that fire. So in 71, they issued that document. No, 70. You think that was a coincidence? 1970? 1970, by the way, and there's no coincidence in this either. Aurora knows all about how this math works with geometry and sound and light patterns. Bless your heart, Aurora. It was no coincidence. You and I were supposed to meet, just like it was no coincidence why I met up with Michelle Martin and where she's at in the UK, right? And Saint Germain and Joan of Arc, right? And it's just these are just blessings to just make what I do when I feel stuff like this. Is go out to the sun and start gifting pink flowers, pink roses to the sun. I'm gifting you all pink roses. I'm pink, dude. And you watch the sun up there going pink. And the importance of indigos, polarity integrators. Polarity integrators, for those that don't understand what that is, are experiencing zero. The founder races, right? Root races. Yep. So you're experiencing being on fire to give away energy. And that's healing energy because you're experiencing the real McCoy, right? And so with Nathan, for example, Leif thought that's a non-repairable. There isn't anything you could do. Just forget it. Okay. That essentially her map breed of Nathan was that his circuits His magnetic circuits are just way too damaged to be able to repair them, to where he could balance his energy out. It's really what it is, right? But Nathan has experienced so much emotional, physical trauma, spiritual torture. Just a lot like Misha, right? That Nathan can respond to input, right? And you'll get a highly negative reactive state that is just like, whoa. And the reason that folks would be sort of, using the word aversion, I would have an aversion to want to be around that being, because you don't know when that being might, what a loose cannon is on the deck of a wooden ship or a starship, right? A loose cannon, you don't have any idea what it's going to do next, because all of a sudden it could react to you in a highly negative way and do something physically to hurt you, or verbally, right? And you would not understand where that comes from. Because what you realize is this is like the experiences that I had when I was a child, being a polarity integrator, right? So I experienced everything that everybody else is feeling on a planetary motherboard, right? So I realized that as a small child, that if I allowed that to consume me, by being aware of that, I wouldn't be able to do my job as a polarity integrator, right? So I'm experiencing the eternal spirit of love, which eternal spirit of fire through my own heart, which means I'm on fire to learn. So now you can sort of tie that in directly to the roadmap that I took, right? And why everything I was experiencing from the time I was a little child, I was supposed to be experiencing. In order for me to learn from those experiences at an accelerated rate of speed, which is like reverse engineering your future, as a result of what they deconstructed and reverse engineered in order to be able to hook up a line to the source from which it all began and feed on it, which would be siphoning off soul energy that has a soul connection to the source from which it all began, which is what love is. Okay, so for me, as a polarity integrator, the map read side of that is to experience how much is being held in your memory that's simply based on resistance. How much resistance am I experiencing in you that I'm experiencing in me, because you haven't cleared your circuits as a result of what others do to others, between seeded races, between, if you will, the first seeded races, root races, the founders, and everything that came after, right? So you would, stands to reason that the founders, being what love is, it goes on forever, gifting electrons at the highest relative speed, then you can imagine the kind of template that an eternal spirit of fire would create that allows everybody to have a one connection, to experience the law of one, which means they would all be experiencing what love is. So when you're experiencing what love is as a state of consciousness, as a consciousness state of being, as a creator being, then you're co-creating with the grand creator out of what love is, what you experience in our mirror, what's been created, right? In a software way, right? So another way to translate this is, I've translated this before by sharing it with all of you in some of the videos that I did when I was in another prison camp, religious prison camp, which was the Gospel Mission in Grants Pass, Oregon. And spoke about not just future proofs past and the quantum probability function, and how to map timelines, multiple timelines, right? And they become genetic wars, which are timeline wars, which are frequency wars and frequency fences. Meant to do what? Trap consciousness in order to feed on it and use that energy to make war. Continue. In other words, you're feeding a war game machine. And this is how I sort of come full circle on this with Nathan, and why it is that I chose the roadmap that I did, from whence I was learning as I was going. For example, my educational map. Okay, so I started out going into fire protection, emergency medical services right out of high school. Actually started way before that, right? When I was getting a first aid card, an advanced first aid card, then becoming an advanced first aid instructor, becoming a lifeguard, then being a lifeguard instructor, right? So everything is about learning and then instructing. Learning and then instructing, which simply means I'm learning and then I'm sharing what I'm learning with others so that they can learn, right, what it is that I am, which is what love is, trying to heal those that have gotten into trouble. So that, in other words, calm down, everything's going to be okay. We have a way to do this. So everything is about containment, if you will, so that people are able to learn what they need to learn in order to take better care of themselves. Or, if you will, be what I call an energy medic. I'm an energy medic, which is like first out of station one, because now I'm aware that something went awry. There is imbalance somewhere, because now people are experiencing in their central nervous system something that has caused their central nervous system to feel what? Anxiety, stress, imbalance, disharmony instead of harmony. So you see how that works with radio sets and radio waves. Distorted waves, a lot of noise, right, with the central nervous system, and how that damages circuits. But it not only damages circuit to burn out one side of the bulb, right, but now that's held in memory. So now it needs to be cleared, and love is what clears that. Now we're back to the spirit of fire, right, which is the spirit that is in that light that is a purifier. When that energy comes in there as a polarity integrator, that's a transmutation machine. That's called clearing the debris fields as a result of being beat up, which means your neurons are getting beat up, which means the central nervous system is being beat up. And when you throw in there the oxygen levels on the planet, and sort of what I mentioned to when I put a post comment into Karen Ann Luke McDonald's post in there about, well, I'll just use one example, okay? How many buildings are there on the planet, or how many people on the planet that breathe air, right? Take a look at the oxygen levels, right? Okay, so here's an example. Where is it? I got an air purifier that I bought, but normally I don't wear one, okay? Primarily because I'm in a house that's got 5G. So this is not an ideal environment for me, but I realize why I'm here. I'm not always going to be here, okay? So I have to make certain accommodations, okay, by the elemental command. And things that I do when I'm not here, which means that it's like the flash sequences run so fast as a polarity integrator, right? It's like being in and out, in and out, in and out, logging in, logging out, which means I'm not always here, okay, because of the speed at which we operate. And so what essentially that means, if I can sort of tie a bow on this a little bit, is that when I'm working with Nathan, what I've noticed is when you get into code transfers and activation of codes, Nathan has improved, albeit even though Lay had felt that Nathan was a non-repairable, Nathan has made some very good improvement. He is more balanced now than he's ever been since I first met him. Okay? And that's why I've always known, even with Misha, okay, I don't know of anything that causes me to cry deeper than it is to ever accept what others ever have to say, because even as much love and honor and respect I have for Lay as a Lemurian, as a Kanaka Maholi, and she would basically say, quit wasting your time on him. He's a non-repairable. There isn't anything to do with him. You can imagine how an eternal spirit of fire that experienced eternal unconditional love, which is me, would respond to that internally, right? How I translate that, okay? I'm not ever going to give up, because that's the same thing as to give up on myself, which is to say that I'm going to give up on eternal love, the eternal state of consciousness, which is the eternal spirit of fire, which is the eternal unconditional love, is not ever going to give up on anybody, because that means I'm giving up on a part of who I am, because that's what I'm experiencing in my mirror is Nathan. He's simply a different aspect of the same all creation that we give eternal unconditional love to. And this is when we get into abandonment issues, right? Which means no matter his own ability to restore himself as a result of the damage that's been done to him, okay, he will never stop experiencing being loved by me, which means no matter what's happening to him, no matter what choices he makes in his life, okay, I will always give Nathan love forever and always. Okay? That's how it works. Which means you could have everybody want to be away from you, not around you, but I will never leave you, Nathan. Ever. You will always know, for as long as you're alive in that physical body, that you are loved by me forever and always. So that you know in your mind, in your state of consciousness, how much ever soul you have left that you're operating on as energy that hasn't been completely siphoned off. That you will know the truth in your own heart, what it is that I am, that I'm sharing with you. Which means you will always be loved by me, no matter what happens to you, no matter what choices you make, no matter how mad you get at me, no matter what you say to me, because he has. Okay? Nathan has said some things that are extremely hurtful and wicked, right? But I understand why, which is a result of what happened to him. Okay, so that's why we're here. Okay? You have to be willing, and I know this, to forgive others. Otherwise, we cannot forgive ourselves by what we experience in others as a result of what happened after the end of day one. Because now we're back to what I do to you, I experience in me. And if I'm not willing to forgive you, then I'm not willing to forgive myself for the things that I've done. Because that's what it begins with. And that's called surrender to the one. Because an eternal love vibration will always forgive you. We don't know how to be any other way. Because everything you are, I am. Because it began with what I am. And I am what love is. It goes on forever. Gifting electrons, gifting love, which is the eternal spirit of fire that's on fire to love you. That's why when Aurora was the first soul that I experienced online by putting a message up in my Facebook page, right? When I put up there, I can't remember the exact words because I'm not a duplicate. I don't make copies. Okay, I just don't remember. Which means the sequence of the letters, like being multidimensional learners, it's not going to be sequenced in the same order using the same time-space vectors in which it was first experienced, and then they're going to be experienced the same way twice. There are no duplicates. Okay, in the mind's energy. What I experience is not ever going to be the same. So when I come full circle of light on that, that simply means that, and now this thing's running interference. So what this means in a larger context with Nathan knows that he's always loved. And so I translated this when I was communicating that, and Aurora came back and gave me a red heart. Okay, now she would not have done that if her own morphic magnetic field resonance, right? The morphogenetic field of communication, the waves of communication, she would not have done that if she couldn't relate to how to translate that on the deepest level of your soul and your spirit. And that's when I put up there that we are willing to wax your car, wash your floors, right? Manicure your feet, comb your hair, right? Take out your garbage, clean up your poop, right? Right? In other words, I'm willing to be your slave, okay? I'll come into your house, and I did that with a lady around the corner on the other side of the island. I put an advertisement up. And so it came back and it said, looking for a houseboy. You're looking for a houseboy? Okay. And so I went to meet with her. Okay. You'd be surprised probably what I was willing to do with her. And we were going to have a contract. Okay. Now, this was a woman that used to be, you know what a madam is in a whorehouse, right? She was a madam working for the mob in New Orleans. Okay? This was a woman that told me straight to my face that she said, listen, if you ever try any funny stuff while you're around this house, I'll cut your nuts off before you can blink. I know. I get it. So this would be what we call a alpha female, right? Which means she is not afraid. She's fearless when it comes to males who got, you know, a set of genitals, right? So she was a madam in New Orleans. So I figure you know the history of New Orleans, right? When it comes to music, France, and all that. And so I was willing to be her slave, and I was willing to, she wanted me to go down and apply for food stamps because I'm 71 years of age and get income through Social Security. So I was going to turn it all over to her, right? And then go get food stamp, turn that all over to her, right? She was a woman who was maybe around 68, 69 years of age. She was going to have plastic surgery done because her face looked like an off-road course in the desert, you know, which was a lot of wrinkles, which are a lot of, you know, curves, right? I call it a desert. You know, when you go out to the desert, you got a lot of sand dunes, you know, so that's called the face of the desert or the face of the moon, you know, or the face of the planet when you're out in the desert. So you realize how those lines work, which has to do with contour, right? Which is called topography. The topography of the disk face, right? The sun, the star, the stargate. And so I started working for her, okay, for free, cleaning up everything down below, and I was happy with this. So if you understand how that works between Future Proof's Past, Back to the Future, it means at some point in time, you realize how to torque convert an inverter. So she begins to experience eternal unconditional love through my heart. She is experiencing through hers to clear all the miasma, which becomes the result of why they use their electrons. Pull them all together, right? And they pull them all together. The force, pull it all together, right? As protection. This is how they use their energy in which to protect them because they know that they're operating in a vampiric energy zone, right? So now she's going to use her energy the same way that the vampire uses its energy, which means I'll be able to tell whether or not I got to cut your nuts off before you ever get the best of me, right? So imagine that all of a sudden she goes from being a black flower, right, into a blooming pink rose. And knowing how to do that. Now, a polarity integrator can do that. That means that you can be a transmutation machine around her because you got an antenna to an antenna, a biocomputer to a biocomputer connection on a motherboard. And the lady did not even know why I was really there to do that. Because you want to know what happens when you do stuff like that? The intensity of that spirit of fire goes ballistic. She didn't realize that actually increases the level of your crystalline shield to be on fire, to be doing this for me. That's right. That's why their fire is not as powerful as our fire. Oh, because the very idea that they would ever get down on their knees and scrub somebody's toilet, I would never do that. You're not ever going to get me to do that for anybody. We hire servants to do that stuff. We hire slaves to do that kind of stuff for us. The very idea that I would ever do anything like that for anybody. Are you kidding? And translate that through the Game of Thrones. Translate that through the AI war game theater. Right? So when I translated this kind of stuff and put it up on the post, who do you think gave me a red heart? Another eternal spirit of fire. That's called code talk. Okay, by the way. And so that's why you understand, because you can translate the perception of power. It's through the accumulation of our energy, thinking they're more powerful than us, by the accumulation of energy off of our stars, and then use our energy against other stars, including our own. Right? So now you see how electric wars are fought. Right? Like Patty mentioned one time, that's a male being. Right? I'm androgynous. I'm zero. I'm not seeking to have any electrical power over anybody, nor would I ever use my electrical power to conduct an electrical war against anybody. Because the highest electrical power is the highest accelerator of electrical power. And that's an eternal sun that is on fire to give them away. So you're not ever going to be able to put that spark out, which means you can't ever put that fire out. So when you become the eternal spirit of fire, you're experiencing eternal unconditional love. It's on fire to love you. So that means that our creative side is on fire, which means we have more ways, which are actually infinite ways, which is infinite possibilities, which is infinite creative ways. It's on fire to show you in all the creative ways that we can how much we love you. Show me how many different ways within a day you can do that. Start putting post-it notes. Start washing the car. Start doing everything so that you don't have to do nothing. You mean to tell me I don't have to do anything? You'll do everything for me? Yeah, so that all you have to do is sit still. So you can experience the still point. That we experience in us. Simply being in the presence of the eternal spirit of fire that loves you without saying a word. Just like the lady that I mentioned one time on a video when I went down to the district attorney's office. No, it wasn't the district attorney's office. It was the, what's the other name they have for these folks? A public defender, defending the public. When I got a ticket one time for not having an idiot light that went out when I was driving at night, my left tail light in the vehicle. And they own the vehicle, by the way. I figure most people know that. When you buy an automobile and you think it's yours because you shelled out the money for it, it doesn't belong to you at all. The state owns it. The corporation owns it. The AI owns it. Okay? See? And so you can see how that works with the birth certificate bond, right? Bonds, soul bonds, sphere of light bonds. So as it turned out with that particular court case, it got extinguished. That's right, it got extinguished, and so that lasted about 2 years. And by the way, what do you think the address is on the courthouse down here in the Big Island, Hawaii? 777, right? Which is what? 21. 3% oxygen, right? No, it's 3, but 21% oxygen. 21% oxygen levels? O3? Yeah, it's O3. So imagine that you're running 21% oxygen levels on the planet. And now we're back to Grants Pass. And something I mentioned, excuse me, my clan mother. See, the AI is anticipating what I'm going to say next, so it's throwing the stuff at me. It's coming at me, the mirror that I'm speaking to you with. When the guy in the gospel mission, and they're expensive, he put an ozonator so that ozone was being pumped through the house, through all the vents. Wow, that must cost a pretty penny. Yeah. But in order to put it in there, you got to be an inverter. Okay? Because it means that you got to accumulate electrons in order to be able to buy it from whoever produced it. Right? Rather than the planet itself experiencing O3 consciousness. Right? The ozone, O3. So what do you think happens if everybody on the planet is experiencing O3? Then everybody doesn't have to go out and be an inverter in order to get what? An ozonator. That's how they use technology to trap consciousness so they don't lose its connection with you. Because it's easy for them, right, to use our electrons in which to produce it and sell it back to us. Okay. I know, Karen. That's how it works. Okay. So now you're into energy debt and being in perfect balance and running the math and geometry to keep yourself, your biosphere, in check. Because now what we're looking at is called the loss and gains of electrons. How many electrons you accumulate, and then you use those electrons to do what? Right? Now I'm back to being 4 years of age when I was a child, right? And giving everything away. So what that means is that I'm never going to have an ozonator. I'm never going to have all this other stuff because it requires me to be an inverter in order to do that. That means if I'm coming in here to do a salvage contract job as a polarity integrator, it means I got to get rid of everything. Not using electrons in which to acquire something held in memory. No, I want to get rid of everything that's held in memory. So experience zero. So it's like, I want to start over again. Every time that circuit opens and closes, experiencing something new out of what love generates. Yeah. That's an eternal creation sphere reality. But it means you're manifesting out of whole cloth what you're now experiencing. Right? So that's when Yellow Rose for Texas talked about we never needed technology. That's right. So this is how when you begin to put the technology side of this into here, it's like, didn't we ever advance behind this stuff? Actually, it already began with not needing technology. Crystal. We are crystal-based consciousness, manifesting in real time. What we experience in our mirror that we manifested. They thus learn through us how to build the technology systems that they do, that they now charge us for, when it began with us. That's how they hold consciousness trapped in an inverted black hole system. You see how that works? Which means we use our soul, my oversoul consciousness, as a transmuter. Right? As if we're going back to the point in which creation began, which began out of eternity. As if nothing in the future ever happened. Nothing in the past hasn't happened either. Because every circuit that we complete is like starting over. Building a new universe. Or if you will, having a brand new experience that has never been experienced before. So you're always experiencing something brand new that has never been experienced before because you're experiencing the eternal spirit of fire that is making it happen. That's a co-creator being. Right? Joined as one with the grand creator, which is eternal unconditional love that's on fire to accelerate electrons so that nobody needs any electrons. Which means you're not needing to what? Acquire electrons off of others in order to maintain what you're aware of in energy, right? Which becomes your energy consciousness security by accumulating electrons by what we sell to others. It comes about as a result of our own energy. But now we're talking about the rate of exchange between using our electrons and the torque speed differential between acquiring electrons, upon which we experience in the future what we bought through our electrons that already began with our energy. And that's a hamster wheel. That's a time looper. Because it means that now we got to acquire electrons for something that has already happened, which means that technology is already produced what we experience in the future. But we're not going to experience it in the future until we have acquired the electrons in order for us to experience what we experienced in the future through them, which is through their black hole technology, to experience through them what we experience in the future as a result of them. But they wouldn't have been able to produce it had it not already been the energy that we are, that it began with, which is what love is. That's an inverted system. Okay. You see how that works between future events? See, as a matter of fact, that technology could have already been in place 500 million years ago. And it's just now being reintroduced in order to hold that consciousness captive now, because it doesn't remember that. And I'll give you a little hint. When they were using, you know what hydraulic mining is? Hydraulic mining is when they're using big water cannons to just completely break away the soil, the topsoil away, and expose what? Gold mines, gold veins, silver veins. And guess what they ran across up near, I think it's north of Auburn, off of I-80 in California, going between Sacramento and Reno, Nevada? Computers, laptops. Wow, how old are these computers and laptops that they were once using? I forget the date that they put on it, but that collection is held in special collections at the University of California, Berkeley. That comes under forbidden archaeology, by the way. They don't want you knowing that either. These are called past performances or repeating past uses of technology. And you can also tie that into Atlantis. Okay. So it's funny how when I think about this, when I was in childhood, I realized that your consciousness is held captive to the technology of the day and what's been introduced to us. But in order to acquire the technology to have any benefit through them, it requires electrons. So how many of electrons have we accumulated in a biometric account that allows us to acquire what they produced that we can now experience? So now we're looking at the generator or the producer of the technology, right? But at the end of the day, we're back to 03. Which means I don't need any technology, what I call an add-on or an adjunct, which is an additional piece of equipment besides this, in order to maintain the breath, the living spirit, eternal breath of an eternal spirit of fire, which is an eternal spirit and a living sun that goes on forever, because we're experiencing eternal unconditional love that goes on forever, breathing fire. So if you wanted to heal everybody so that everybody is clear, the lungs are clear, so the channel is clear, so we're not experiencing any distorted waves as a result of code swarming, genes swarming, right? Viral codes. And now we're back to why I went from emergency medical and fire protection services and went directly into what? Hazmat. Hazardous materials and toxic substances. And now we're into time dilation or time density related to exposure, the film exposure, and holographic speed, and being able to burn off what we've been exposed to in the film, right? The negative, which is getting rid of codes. Somebody, I think, is knocking on my door. Uh-oh. And so, yeah, I took a hazmat route. That was the road route that I took so that I could study epidemiology, toxicology, the rate of exposure. The rate of exposure when it comes to dose-response relationships, right? And what we call isolates. Isolating the codes, isolating the elements, right? What do we have here? Because at the end of the day, what we're measuring is called the mass. the mass, the electrical density mass of the state of consciousness is experiencing itself. What it's held trapped to so that it can't experience more light, which is resistance of what's held in memory that needs to be cleared. Code clearings, burning off glucose. Have a great day.